So you've got you now have the Society of St. Peter, who are definitely in communion with the Pope. Nobody can argue with that. You've got the new Institute of Christ the King. Dr. Mara and I, when we were in Italy this year at Lake Garda, we had some fine young priests from that fraternity. One came and acted as chaplain. We've got indult masses, some of them wonderful congregations. I'm going to give a talk in Washington at the church there, St. Mary's. It's a wonderful congregation, I think about 400, with a lot of very young people. But what I want to say about that is every one of these positive things that we can see is due to one man only, and that's Archbishop Lefebvre. Why? We were told for years and years and years, people who want the Tridentine Mass are we're rebels, we're living in a time warp. Then all of a sudden, when Archbishop Lefebvre consecrated those bishops, they became legitimate aspirations. And the Pope said all the bishops must respond to our legitimate aspirations and let us have the Tridentine Mass. Why was that done? That was done just to get people away from the Pius X chapels. So...
Let Dr. Jones comment on.
Not a fair comparison, because the reason the fraternity was allowed to flourish by the Vatican is precisely because the Society of St. Pius X was right there. The big knock on the fraternity over the years was, they're always setting up shop right next to an SSPX chapel. Well, that wasn't their fault. The bishop would invite them in to try to do precisely that, to try to take away from what he considered the schism. So you can't really separate the society from works. It's like back in the 80s and 90s, wherever you had a McDonald's, you always had a Burger King across the street. Well, the result was you had a little choice because, let's face it, this is not great food. So some days you might want to try a burger, whatever. So now you have where formerly you would have only had one chapel. Now you have two. And that happened all over the world, where there was just a Society of Pius X chapel. Now, oftentimes, there's a fraternity chapel. And this is the way it was, especially in the 80s and 90s. Now it's the fraternities going wherever they can. And it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the society's locations. But in 1988...
Lefebvre was prophetic in the true sense. And, you just look at the trajectory coming out of the 1950s, and you look at where we are today. And, with the fraternity, they wouldn't be here if it weren't for 1988. And then the diocesans, they received Summorum Pontificum. But it was the society saying, we want all priests on earth to be able to celebrate the old Mass. That was one of their conditions.
Absolutely.
So, if you're a diocesan priest who celebrates the Latin Mass, you need to realize the people who lobbied and campaigned for that explicit right for you right now was the society, and even with the fraternity, all the origin and all these things were being fought in a careful way, I think in a prayerful way by Archbishop Marcel Lefebvre. So
confession and marriage and all. So what Lefebvre did is not objectively speaking, it absolutely changed history because the church is hierarchical. So I always say, whether you like Lefebvre, you think he was right or wrong, you simply cannot underestimate the impact that the man had. He changed everything, and he brought the traditional Latin Mass back because he said, fine, I'm going to go off, I'm going to start my own society, and the traditional Mass will survive. So then the Vatican began backtracking a little bit and allowing the traditional Latin Mass. So if you're enjoying the Latin Mass right now, you simply cannot separate that privilege to have the traditional Latin Mass, that right to have the traditional Latin Mass, from what happened in 1988 with Archbishop Marcel Lefebvre.
Yeah.
This emergency, which can easily be proven in canon law, this emergency caused Rome to found a new organization, the Fraternity of St. Peter. Some of the priests, most of them, by the way, not in disagreement with the consecrations, the episcopal consecrations, that's another one of those tiny little dishonesties, or deviations from truth. Most of them didn't leave the Society of St. Pius X because they were against the episcopal consecrations, but because they wanted to leave anyway. So then now they had a new chance. And The Fraternity of St. Peter was founded for the only and exclusive purpose to get people away from the Society of St. Pius X. Ain't that nice? So, an organization like this does not have the blessing of the Holy Spirit because the Church does not do things like this. The Church does not do that.